Sair da escola já com uma formação profissional no currículo? Parece bom demais pra ser verdade, né? Pois é. No ensino técnico do Senac, isso é possível. É ensino médio junto com formação técnica, que acontece durante os 3 anos. Lá, eles usam metodologia para projetos, desenvolvendo competências como resolução de problemas, pensamento crítico e colaboração, além de valores éticos e sustentáveis. Quer saber? Senac. Acesse sp.senac.br/ensino médio e saiba mais.
Hi there, I am Sarah Jane Case, and I'm the host of your new favorite show, Enneagram and Coffee. This podcast is dedicated to discussing the beautiful and hard parts of being human. We discuss the Enneagram, a personality map that is taking over the world, for increased self-compassion, personal growth, and healthier relationships. Listen to Enneagram and Coffee on the iHeart app or wherever you get your podcasts.
A disgruntled Hunt begins his day learning that he is Baxian's new tour guide to the city of Lunathion. Meanwhile, back at Bryce's apartment, Tharion and Ithan watch the game while they wait for Bryce and company to return as planned. Ruhn escorts Bryce home from the archive, where they are unpleasantly surprised to find Aidas, Prince of the Chasm, in his cat form on Ithan's lap. Aidas challenges Bryce to learn more about her powers and drops the bomb of Agent Silverbow's identity on the group before departing. When Prince Cormac threatens the gang when they show no interest in helping for the greater good, Bryce and Hunt blow him off, though Ruhn thinks twice after speaking to Flynn and Declan. While Bryce and Hunt agree to renege on their Winter Solstice agreement, Ruhn agrees to help Cormac contact Agent Daybright. The views expressed by the hosts are entirely their own and in no way represent the thoughts or intentions of the original author.
This podcast is a discussion, shared to spark thought and conversation on the characters and themes of this novel.
The interpretations presented in this podcast are just a few of many possibilities. Listeners are encouraged to read along and share their own analysis of the text.
Though the hosts speak mostly within the constraints of this book, series and extended universe spoilers may be discussed with or without warning.
Explicit language as well as themes of sex, violence, abuse, depression, self-harm, and death will recur throughout this podcast. Listener discretion is advised.
If you are enjoying the podcast, check out our Patreon for more exclusive content. You can find us at patreon.com/Book Talk for Book Talk. Welcome to Book Talk for Book Talk with Jac and Amy, a podcast where we deep dive into the writing of your favorite novels.
This season, we're exploring Sarah J. Maas's second installment in the Crescent City series. This is Jac.
And I'm Amy. This is part 1 of this week's episode, where we're discussing chapters 14 through 19 in House of Sky and Breath.
This week we ask ourselves, why are all our heroes so unaligned on their views about their lives and their next steps forward?
Themes we see in this section: longing for normal.
Chapter 14 starts off with Hunt and Isaiah watching two angels train, which is an interesting way of starting a chapter because, as always, there's always more to interpret when they're observing something. They're watching a male and female fight against each other, and neither Hunt or Isaiah have faith in the female. Quote, "The female was faster and cleverer than the male she faced. The male had 100 pounds on her. My money's on the male," Isaiah murmured. "So's mine. She's too green to hold out much longer." That was Hunt agreeing, by the way. Later, the female's going to surprise them. Quote, "The female ducked and slammed her fist into the male's gut. He went down like a sack of flour," and Hunt chuckled, memories and dread shaking loose. "A pleasant surprise," he said. So to me, it's like another moment of underestimating a woman. Like, I'm not saying that that female angel is Bryce, but I think it's a good moment of like, maybe Hunt, we give the women more of a chance here.
Yeah, and they have more hidden strength than you realize. Have you learned nothing from Earth and Blood?
Please go back and read your book, Hunt.
So many assumptions were made about Bryce, Hunt making those assumptions included.
Yeah.
And look how she surprised everybody.
She killed an archangel.
Yeah.
People.
Give her more credit.
Yeah.
I think we can also see this metaphor. The thing, of course, that was playing in my head was The Man by Taylor Swift.
Yes.
The man could also be considered the powers that be, or the Asteri. So the woman beats the man, a.k.a. Bryce beats the Asteri. I think also on a different level, it's about the underdog beating the more physically powerful, the resistance versus the oppressors.
It's just like, I think he should look at his own metaphors and what he's observing.
He has 200 years of experience that he's falling back on.
Yep.
Where he was enslaved. He didn't win his rebellion, so how can anyone else win theirs?
And that's like huge for him, like that thought process, right? That's what's going to take him through the rest of the book, and especially in this chapter, because the topic of war is on everyone's mind. Isaiah is worried about it, not even knowing anything about Sophie. Like, he's still like, oh no, war's coming. And it's like, bro, you don't even know how bad it actually
it's already
is.
On your doorstep.
Yeah, like it's really bad. Hunt thinks about not being able to sleep the night before because he wants to talk to Bryce. Meanwhile, remember, Bryce was like, I'm so horny for him. I can't sleep. And he's laying there thinking like, I want to talk to her, but I can't. There's like poison in my veins. And then he even thinks, quote, but Bryce being Bryce, she'd seen all that, knew what haunted him, and held his hand as she said yes. That being yes to talking about it later, which like, he spent all night stressed out thinking about like, I have to ask her that we can talk. If you have to be that stressed out to ask your partner to talk about something, like, Hunt, Bryce, let's all talk. That's not good.
Yeah. But I would also say you and I've been in that situation in our own relationships in the past.
War, topic of conversation. Yeah, where it's like, you want to talk to them about something and you're just like scared. And I think again, it goes back to something we talked about before, which is natural growing pains. Mm-hmm. They just happen to have high stakes with them in this book. Yeah. I think I'm personally much more of like a, okay, we're going to talk about it now type thing. And I think you think about it a little bit longer.
Oh, I definitely do.
Yeah. I'm like, okay, I have a thought. Let's talk about this. Let's dissect.
Yeah, no, I'm always like, when's the right moment to talk about it?
Every moment. There's never a right moment.
But that's just how my brain works.
Yeah. You're Hunt.
I am Hunt.
And that's okay. And I am Ruhn. I don't know. Remember, all through this, like, even though Hunt's like, oh, Bryce is looking out for me, no, she's not. She's kind of made up her mind about Emil. And this chapter, not just this chapter, but this episode is going to be really interesting, seeing Bryce kind of go back and forth and waver a little bit about it. And she kind of is a bit of a hypocrite even to herself.
While I was working on my notes, I saw your notes, obviously, and I was doing my own brain dump, and it took me a while. I think I might have gotten somewhere.
Oh.
But we'll see. It might be nowhere.
Okay. Hunt reflects on the previous war and how he ignored others' warnings from Isaiah. So, Isaiah's warnings. Quote, Hunt ordered his friend out, had curled up along Shahar, who listened to their argument from her bed behind the curtain of the tent. She promised him that Isaiah was wrong. That feels so manipulative to me. Like, she's just sitting there in bed, waiting, listening to their conversation, which, like, okay, I would too, but rude. And just then kind of like using sex as a way, like, just the fact that it says, like, he then curled up beside her, it kind of hurt my heart a little bit for him.
I think also that idea of being behind the curtain, it's very Wizard of Oz.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
So Shahar being behind the curtain, manipulating the power, but not really having any power.
You're right. That's where she died.
Jack feels good about that.
I'm not mad. I'm not mad about her. If only we're going to bring her back to kill her off again. Yeah. That's my only note. At the same time, like, that manipulation, that use of sex kind of reminds me of Bryce. Now, I think there was a lot more love, obviously, with Bryce and Hunt. There's a lot more, like, they're mates, right? And there's a lot of, like, earnest truth there. That doesn't mean sex isn't used to advantage. And we're going to actually see that later this episode. But let's go back to this moment where he's thinking about Shahar. Quote, Hunt had believed her because he was so afraid. He realized later he believed her and they fucked like animals, and a few hours after dawn, she was dead. Mini sidetrack. Currently, Hunt and Bryce aren't having sex. Different from Shahar, but Hunt views Bryce differently. So later, when Bryce puts sex on the table, I wonder if that kind of like disrupts his image of her.
Interesting.
Because right now, like, sex isn't on the table.
Yep.
So it's almost like Bryce is thinking with a clear mind.
Oh, he thinks she's thinking with a clear mind. Interesting.
And I don't think that's like, he's not obviously thinking with that with like so many words or anything like that. But, you know, later he's going to kind of put a pause on sex. Like he's going to ask her like, hey, like, are you sure you really want this? Like, you know, he's the one who's going to slow it down. Mm-hmm. And like, I wonder how much of it is like hidden trauma of like sex kind of complicated things with him and Shahar and following her lead. And that's kind of the same thing, except now it's all like true love mixed with it. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting point. I want to put a pin on that and maybe explore that when we get to the actual sexy stuff.
The alleyway.
The dirty, dirty, sexy stuff. I saw you think real hard about that.
It's like, I'm not against it, but it doesn't smell good.
No, it doesn't.
So no real note, though, but I want to point out that this description of war, quote, the mech suits smoldering with their pilots bleeding out inside them, heaps of broken wings piled high in the sky, some shifters going feral and feasting on the carrion along the crows. That's like cannibalism. That's shifters straight up lose it, and they're eating other shifters. Mm-hmm. I just love when Sarah does this.
And it's subtle.
It's subtle. I would love more.
Yeah.
My note, more cannibalism?
Yeah. Oh my God.
That would be my one takeaway. But I love like her little disruptive moment because she does it really subtly. Like she'll throw in something. She did this with Akatar too, where it's like, here's a little factoid that when you actually look at it, you're like, that is extremely fucked up.
Yeah. She doesn't want to draw a lot of attention to it because the character doesn't want to dwell on it, right?
Yeah, but I do.
Exactly. But it's great because it's not traumatizing to us, which allows us to want to continue to dwell on it.
Maybe I have to revisit some of my writing.
So I want to look at this chapter from the Marxist lens because, as you've pointed out, Jack, there are animal references, and this isn't the only one. I think that there's a slow build-up on these animal references, especially animals as symbols of like baser instincts and feralness, feralosity.
Oh, feralosity. I like that.
I made it up, but
I like it.
So we start out with the weather at the beginning of the chapter. Quote, Solus was slow roasting them over a pit of coals. Makes me think very Akatar, pig on a spit. And then the quote that you just read, Jack, of the shifters going feral and feasting on carrion. There's this loss of humanity. There's this feasting on Vanir. There's Vanir turning on Vanir.
Yep.
So when Hunt looks at Baxian, who's in his shifter form, he has these references floating through his mind that animal no longer equates to humanity. Shifter in shifter form is equivalent to cannibalism, to your point.
Animalistic, like far more animal leaning.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So what does Hunt focus on? He focuses on, quote, he'd seen Baxian rip limbs from opponents with those jaws and move as fast on land as he did in his Malik form. As if sensing his attention, Baxian turned his head. His dark eyes gleamed. You know, from Hunt's point of view, I don't blame him for thinking Baxian is bad news because he has all these ideas about what it means to be a shifter on the wrong side.
I mean, if you're a shifter, you're using what you've got, and what you've got are claws and jaws. Yeah, I'd be horrified too.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, I also get it. If I was a shifter, like, do what you got to do.
Right. I agree.
What animal would you be in this world?
A cheetah.
Oh.
Because I could run away fast.
Genius answer. I don't even want to say anything. Let's move on. That was great.
You don't want to contribute?
I think you're brilliant.
Okay. I thought you had an animal for yourself.
No, I just want to know about you. I was just asking.
I'm curious, though, what your animal is.
I like this idea of running away. So it'll be something with wings that's big enough to like help pick you up.
Oh,
so somewhere
when I'm tired.
Yeah. So
Love
like
it.
I can like rest on your back.
Yeah.
And then like fly you away too.
You know what? Bald eagles are huge.
I think I could be a bald eagle.
Yeah, you could pick me up when I need rest. You could.
We'll switch.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
When Baxian then approaches Hunt and they begin talking, quote, Baxian laughed, low and lifeless. The hot, dry breeze rustled his black wings. So it was hot, the weather, it's roasting Hunt, and now the hot wind is being associated with Baxian.
Yep.
Like, it's all coming back to this. Baxian is threatening because of all of Hunt's experiences. He's not going to understand Baxian, even though it is the most obvious thing on the planet.
Oh my god, it is so hard because Baxian comes over with like a flag that says, "Hey Hunt, I'm your ally." It's a white flag with hearts all over it that says Hunt plus Baxian equals allies. Like, it is he's so stupid. I have to say, the boys in these chapters, be stupid.
Very much so.
So, like I said, he comes over with a big old flag saying, "Ally, ally."
LA.
And Baxian literally tells Hunt he was, quote, "always a literal sort of bastard."
Mm-hmm.
Like, hey, Hunt, maybe you don't be literal this time. I'm going to continue that quote.
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't read between the lines. You've always been a literal sort of bastard who couldn't read between the lines.
I have lines to be read between, is what Baxian is saying.
Yeah, I like wonder if he's like miming this out. Like, lines between. Look. Yeah, so like he's like, "Hey man, I need you, like, you're an idiot. I need you to pick up what I'm putting down." Quote, "But I had as little choice in serving Sandril as you did, only I didn't make my displeasure known." Translation, I hated it too.
Mm-hmm.
Another quote, "You never asked me why I was in her triari. Not once in all those decades. You're like that with everyone, Athalar. Surface level. Fuck off and go back to your work." That's Hunt. That's my Hunt voice. Translation, ask me. Ask me a single question about me.
Yeah. And Hunt can't, because remember how he treated Bryce in Earth and Blood. I've already said it, but like, it's so important right now. Hunt, you've learned nothing. He is dumb. What I like about this moment is SJM is telling us as readers, Hunt's dumb.
Yeah.
You know better.
Yeah, I don't think Baxian is meant to be a surprise.
Baxian, no.
It was never a surprise.
It was never a surprise. Like, this moment alone.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, all right, I pick up what you're putting down, even if Hunt doesn't.
I think this is meant for us to be like, we're smarter than you.
Yeah, exactly.
Hunt. Yeah.
Exactly. And we maybe can't trust Hunt's point of view right now, which I think is important moving on into
Everything
else.
Yeah.
And I think we're already inclined to feel that, right? Because
he's not picking up what Bryce is putting down either.
Exactly.
Yeah, even though she's giving him mixed messages, but alas.
It does begin to dawn on Hunt, because there's a quote where he's like, "Oh yeah, I've never seen Baxian around." I can't remember which
Pollux and Hind or
the Hawk. It was one of the Triari.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I've never seen them interact. Oh, they actually are never standing together. So Hunt maybe kind of understands, but he doesn't go all the way with the, maybe I've made wrong assumptions.
With the thought exercise.
Yeah. He didn't exercise his brain. Baxian is no saint, though. He is just as guilty of this as Hunt is, because what does he say? Quote, "Bryce Quinlan is an expensive girlfriend, I take it. Princesses like pretty things." Why didn't Hunt come to her defense? Isn't everything she owns mostly Danica's?
Yeah. And I wonder if that's actually Baxian giving him a clue that with Danica. Because Baxian is Danica's mate. He knows everything about Bryce.
Yeah.
He probably knows that apartment was completely furnished by Danica.
Yeah, it's fair.
To me, I felt like that was more of like a nod to Danica in a way.
Yeah, and Hunt should have said something.
Yes.
Because how do you know Baxian?
Right? Oh, that's interesting for someone who's never met her.
I mean, he saw her in the cells for
someone
a couple minutes.
For someone who met her once. Like, what makes you think she's expensive? What gives you that idea? I heard her apartment is really decked out.
How do you know that?
How do you know?
Yeah. Hunt.
Oh, Hunt. Another flag that's being waved between both the boys, and both boys don't realize this one, is that Lydia is an object to be used. Like them, if not worse. Quote, "Pollux is too pissed about being separated from the Hind. I didn't realize the hammer was capable of caring for anyone like that. He isn't. He just likes to have control over his belongings." Okay, so like they're making it clear that Lydia is a belonging. That like it's such an interesting like duality of thought where it's like she's a horrible person who's owned by someone.
Yeah, and is in conflict with what we've seen of her in the prologue.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which calls into question, she was being controlled?
Maybe we should think about that.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe we should observe these things.
Exactly.
Then Hunt thinks, quote, "The Hind belongs to no one." And then just like a few sentences later, "The Hind has spent most of her service to Sandriel off on missions for the Asteri, rented out like some sort of field worker to do their spy hunting and rebel breaking." How do you go from she doesn't belong to anyone to like, oh, she's being rented and you have to be owned in order to be rented? Neither of them are trying too hard to understand the woman here.
Well, and he specifically uses field worker to describe her.
Yeah.
Which, if you think of fiefdoms in medieval England, they have no power.
None.
So the Hind, this rebel breaker and killer, actually has no power.
But like, we're also going to condemn her for everything else that she's done, which like I get, but it's just like a circle of like everyone's done fucked up shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yet, you know, let's go ahead. But like the only one we can't get past is Lydia.
Right. I mean, Hunt has just recently admitted to some messed up stuff that he did with mech suits before. We're capable of forgiving him.
Yeah. Oh, I forgive Lydia.
I do too.
I've been re-listening to Flame and Shadow.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm mad at Ruhn.
Yeah.
It's only made it worse. He deserves to have his hand chewed off. I laughed the entire scene.
Oh my gosh.
I just wish it was both hands.
He wouldn't be able to get her off then.
It'd grow back. He wouldn't be able to get himself off. That's what matters. What's also like just an interesting moment is the fact that like Hunt's uncomfortable hearing Lydia's name. Baxian calls her Lydia, and there's a certain amount of like humanity that's given. Hunt has only ever called her the Hind.
Right.
And just like he was only ever called the Umbra Mortis, right? But Baxian, you know, although we know later on in book 2 or some book later this book, he's like, what? You're an ally? But he's also like able to roll with it.
Yeah.
Because he humanizes her. He calls her by her name. Hunt can't get past that.
Yeah, the Harpy, he only calls the Harpy the Harpy. And so she is dehumanized, where to your point, Lydia is Lydia. Not her last name, her first name. I think in this moment, even though we don't realize the outcome until Flame and Shadow, is the fact that SJM is subliminally messaging that Baxian and Lydia should be thought of together.
Yeah.
Not as a couple, but like
in the same category.
In the same category.
Agreed. There's a lot more clues about Lydia being actually good.
Oh, yeah.
In this. And I respect that a lot.
I do too.
So now we're switching over to Tharion's point of view. He showed up at Bryce's and he's immediately greedy. Because of course he is. Quote, "Tharion wanted to own Bryce Quinlan's apartment badly, but he sure as shit didn't make enough to afford it, and the sun would shine in hell before the River Queen allowed him to live above." He's greedy, and the above world represents Bryce. Like, you know, he kind of has this like weird fascination with her. You know, like we already know that, you know, he's super, like they have like a really flirty dynamic, but what she is and what she represents is what he wants. Which is why I think he also extra flirts with her too.
Yeah, I agree. I also like to look at Bryce as symbol for freedom in Tharion's mind. She's not limited by the River Queen the way he is.
Yeah.
She's not limited by money like he is. And that's all his perception. What he doesn't understand is the fact that, you know, this is all Danica's, and Danica left a lot behind for her. She's got her own demons to face, like the Autumn King and the Asteri. But what I see in this moment is Tharion is so full of self-hatred that he has to turn his resentment out to people around him to avoid looking inwardly.
Yeah. When I think Tharion, I think Ithan. Like they're very similar to me.
Yeah.
But, you know, I'm kind of starting to see a little bit more of the differences. And I feel like Tharion definitely has a lot more self-hatred.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's subtle here where it's overt in Flame and Shadow.
Yes. Yeah. But, you know, we're building up to it.
Yeah, we sure are.
We see the text exchange between Tharion and Bryce, and it's both charming, you know, like that they're using kind of like sex as like a, like, don't look in my underwear. I promise nothing. Or like, I think he says, like, gonna look through your underwear, and she's like, don't leave a stain.
Yeah.
It is funny, and it's a battle of charm and sex, and they just keep going at that, and I love it. I respect it. Like, we know Tharion is comfortable with charm. We know he uses it to disarm, but I think it's a dance that he respects most with Bryce.
Yeah.
Because that's the one he can't sway.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Ithan, on the other hand, is not used to it. And so when he's looking at the text messages between him and Bryce, he confirms that it's the number, and he says, quote, I thought she was involved with Athalar. And I'm sure he's reminded about Connor. I'm sure he's like bringing in old bad memories. And what we keep seeing is that Ithan is seen a new side to Bryce.
Yeah.
She's sexual. She's fun. She's flirty. She's a badass. Like, fear her. All of this, though, Ithan is still protective over Bryce. Quote, I don't appreciate being dragged into this or having Bryce dragged into it either. You're endangering her simply by mentioning it. And I actually think that Ithan is the only perspective that is viewing Bryce correctly through these next couple chapters.
I will be interested to hear your argument as we go through.
Well, that sounds like someone does not agree.
I don't know where I'm at, actually.
Okay. It's like literally one line that I'm going to reference, so it's not a strong argument.
Okay. As Tharion and Ithan interact, Tharion leans into his Captain Whatever title to seem less intimidating to Ithan and to get information out of Ithan about Danica. I don't need to read the quote because it's just like...
Captain Whatever.
Yeah. Now, this is, again, Flame and Shadow. Shut up.
Sean Connery has taken over here.
This is a Flame and Shadow setup because the Captain Whatever title becomes something that haunts and demeans Tharion in his own mind. But right now he's like, yeah, I'll take it on because I'm suave. I'm charming. I'm going to get the information out of you.
He's not. In case the book hasn't made it clear yet, Ithan plays Sunball.
Oh no, I didn't know that.
And like everything is referenced to like, hey Captain, hey Mr. Ithan, Sunball Captain, the captain of the Sunball team. He was an excellent athlete.
He could read his opponents all the time.
And that makes him suddenly good and equipped to handle things.
He's a kid.
He is such a kid. And we'll see that later.
Yep.
Tharion also makes himself way too comfortable in Bryce's home. I'm kind of annoyed of everyone just making themselves at home in her home. And, you know, he takes his shoes off. He puts his feet on the coffee table, which is just rude. And then he goes and raids her fridge. Like, I think he really just wants to be Bryce.
Yeah.
And eventually, though, Tharion and Ithan share a pizza. And it's just a special, it's a special stupid boy friendship was born.
Yes, and I think that that's important to observe because at the start of Flame and Shadow, Ithan is adamant about rescuing Tharion.
Yep.
And so every moment with Ithan and Tharion together or one-on-one in this book is important to build up that relationship.
Yeah.
And it starts early.
I make a point later, but I want to bring that point up now. I think that there's something to be said about the fact that Tharion's younger sibling died only like a year or so before.
Yeah.
Granted, it was a sister, but still younger sibling. And Ithan's older sibling was gone, has been dead for a couple of years. So, there's like a vacant space for both.
Yeah. I mean, if you think, I also make this point later, but I'll say it now. Tharion, it becomes Connor's substitute.
Yep.
Because Tharion flirts with Bryce the same way Connor used to flirt with Bryce.
Yep.
Tharion is authoritative in a way that Ithan isn't right now,
And Tharion isn't like, I have to be the leader the same way that Connor wasn't.
Exactly.
I have to be the leader.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. In chapter 15, Ruhn meets up with Bryce at lunch and takes her to her apartment. And he's just like all cute about it because he's like, she asked me to walk her over. She wants me to come with her to view all this. And I just like love that he's still in the honeymoon phase of his relationship with his sister. And Ruhn tells Bryce, though, like as they're walking, they keep getting recognized. And Ruhn tells Bryce that being recognized is kind of part of the territory. And honestly, like, I think like she'd be recognized regardless of being a princess. She saved everyone.
Right.
You know? And I know he's kind of like coaching her through all this, but it just reminds me a lot of like of Farah when she saved everyone and, just kind of coping through that. The difference is like Farah became High Lady pretty quickly after.
Yeah.
And that's like part of the territory. I think it just still shows that Bryce isn't ready to step into that power yet.
Right.
Either. I also love mirroring and reflection.
Mm-hmm.
And, last chapter started off with Hunt, the main, and, some main characters outside, and they're feeling the heat. And then I love that, now here's Bryce and Ruhn, and they're both thinking about like how hot it is.
Mm-hmm.
I just love that both characters in both sets are in the heat, and I think it's just like meant to add the like pressure.
Mm-hmm.
Like we all know that feeling of it's like it's hot outside, it's miserable, you're walking. I mean, we have that right now in LA. It sucks out there.
Yeah.
And I think it just kind of adds to that tension and build up.
Definitely, especially we know, having read this book, Aidas is about to show up. He's a prince of hell. We think fire and brimstone.
Yeah.
We think the added pressure of Cormac
Yep.
and Ophian. Things are getting really heavy for this group. Fires are literally being lit. Not literally. Fires are figuratively being lit under their asses.
Yeah.
And it is... SJM is capturing it in every way she can.
Yeah, she is.
No reprieve.
We need more asses.
So there's a moment during the conversation between Bryce and Ruhn that I don't like. It makes me uncomfortable.
Oh.
Because uncomfortable is the wrong word, but I get annoyed.
Yeah, love it.
You and I are going to get annoyed at the characters a lot in this episode.
I mean, it was me last episode. It was us last the
it's
episode
true.
before. I don't have confidence in our future of not being annoyed.
I agree. I want to try to take a step back and try to determine, are we annoyed because SJM wrote them to be annoying?
Mm-hmm.
Or are we annoyed because we feel there are inconsistencies in SJM's writing?
And right now, I'm happy to say I don't think they're inconsistent.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, let's keep going.
Yeah. I'm willing to change my mind.
Bryce tells Ruhn, quote, Danica kept a lot of things from me, and I don't see the point in keeping secrets anymore. That may be true now, but not later, and that annoys me.
Right. I didn't even think of that. Like, I'm not going to keep secrets except for everything else in my life. Yeah.
I do think that this moment makes us fall into a sense of complacency with Bryce.
Yeah.
Because, the several times that I've read Sky and Breath, I never quite pick up the clues for how and when Bryce finds Emil.
Yeah.
It just, all of a sudden, he's there and she found him.
Yeah.
So, anyway.
I mean, I'm excited to look for those clues because we were struggling in the last season trying to figure out when Hunt decides to betray Bryce.
Yeah.
And there was a couple of, like, I guess moments. But yeah.
Yep. Ruhn does a lot of reflection on Emil and Sophie during his walk with Bryce. And I think this takes place because Ruhn, being so happy to be with his sister, can empathize with a sibling who wants to be with their younger sibling, wants to free their younger sibling.
Yeah.
Quote, he couldn't begin to imagine what it had been like for Emil to endure and for Sophie to spend every moment of every day praying and working for his survival. That she hadn't given up, that she'd accomplished it. Ruhn had no words. I think Ruhn felt a little bit of that, like, longing at the end of Earth and Blood. He couldn't get to his sister in time to help her while Lunathion's being bombed. Like, she's pretty much good as dead. If Hunt hadn't been there...
Yep, she would be dead.
She would be dead.
Yeah.
In this moment, I think what we're seeing is Ruhn coming to respect Sophie. Mm-hmm. Because as a sibling, he understands her plight and appreciates her effort.
Yep.
And I think that's important for why Ruhn is willing to go and talk to Cormac later.
I agree. I like that. Good job.
Thanks. Also, just a little breadcrumb. Flynn and Declan do that for Ruhn one day.
Yeah.
In the future.
Yeah.
Ruhn, you don't know how much pain is coming to you.
Good.
There is a moment of irony, especially when we know we're about to see Regulus as Aidas, which you and I are going to talk a lot about in a little bit.
Yep.
Ruhn and Bryce talk about the Asteri's motives and why they didn't punish Bryce and Hunt in the spring. Ruhn says, quote, if they want you alive, I'd start wondering what that is. You have the horn in your back. That's no small thing. What does Regulus tell Bryce to do?
Learn your power.
Right. And accessing the horn.
Yeah. Yep.
One last moment in the conversation, Ruhn gets emotional while talking about wanting to be normal. And that goes back to, when he tells Bryce, get used to it. It comes with the territory. He says, quote, trust me, I get it. It sucks to want to be normal, but to have all this other shit that keeps you from being that way. His voice turned hoarse. he's not the only one that's going to long for normal in this episode. And it's going to be interesting to see all of them long for normal and how they choose to disrupt that normalcy.
And also, like, what the meaning of normal means for each of them. Like, for Bryce, we talked about normal meaning human. Yeah. Right? Like, that is her normal. For Ruhn, normal means not his father.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So anything that's not him is going to be what Ruhn defines as normal and striving for.
Yep. That's a great point.
Thank you. Ruhn reminds Bryce that her identity has in fact changed. Quote, "The Bryce before this spring might have searched for a meal with few repercussions, but the Bryce who exists now, any move you make will be politicized, analyzed." Why did I write like us?
Because we will... Every move they make.
Because we're analyzing.
We're analyzing them.
That makes sense. I'm laughing at my own note. Why did we put that? Oh, yeah, because we're analyzing them. Yep. Bryce sees the white cat on Ethan's lap, and we know instantly what it means. Only we think we know what it means. We think that it's Aidas, but it's actually...
Rigulus.
Rigulus. Exactly. Thank you. Keeping that in mind throughout this chapter, like, your brain kind of has to do a little bit of exercise with this. And... another moment of Bryce and Hunt being linked before we get into the whole Aidas Rigulus of it all. Quote, "Behind her, a familiar ripple of ether-laced power kissed over her skin, a small reassurance." So again, like, there's so many little tiny moments, but I think these little tiny moments like really build up to be like, yes, not only are they mates, but they are like, their powers are connected.
Yeah. Yeah.
So just gonna keep pointing them out. Again, coming back to it, it's really weird thinking that all this is actually Regulus. And like, okay, I understand that his power, that his objective is to get Bryce to learn how to use the horn so that they can go to Prythian.
Yes.
I get that. How much is he lying throughout this process and how much is he not? Because everything he said is true.
And even Hunt at the end says, I don't think he was lying. And Hunt sniffs out liars every time.
Yes.
So we believe everything to be true.
Yes.
It is a weird mindfuck.
Yeah.
It is a weird mindfuck. I had to go back and read chapter 51 of Earth and Blood when Aidas shows up after being summoned to really...
catch anything?
Like, catch things.
Yeah.
So...
I hope you did, because
I did.
Because it's very much like, you know, we'll go through it, but like there are some things that Regulus says, and I'm like, yeah, that is what Aidas would say. That is what Aidas would want.
Yeah, so let's go through it.
Okay. We'll be right back.
This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp.
Amy, you know life is so unbelievably stressful right now for both of us.
It is always the worst time of year, this time of year.
Genuinely. There are so many things in my life that are non-negotiable when it comes to taking care of myself. Gym's not one of those. But you know what is? Therapy.
Always, always have your therapy. I've learned that I cannot go without therapy every other week at a minimum. I can't get through the hard times if I haven't already done the pre-scheduling, because if I haven't scheduled, I'm not scheduling when it's hard. It has to be pre-scheduled.
Luckily, scheduling for therapy just got easy. If you're thinking about starting therapy, definitely give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, which I absolutely recommend because it is so convenient and flexible, and it's suited to your schedule.
It is so much better for those stressful times because you can fit it in whenever there's space rather than waiting till the end of the day or first thing in the morning, because it's hard to fulfill those commitments.
Absolutely. And, you know, the fact that it's working around your schedule and your time, it makes that self-care even easier and more obtainable.
All you need to do is fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists anytime for no additional charge until you find the right one.
Taking time to find the right therapist is so important. I'm currently in that endeavor of trying to find the right therapist, and the fact that BetterHelp has it this easy for you, it takes so much of the pressure off.
Never skip therapy day with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/booktalk today to get 10% off your first month.
That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/booktalk to get 10% off your first month.
That's BOOKTOK. Fall has officially started here in Los Angeles, and that means we finally get to do fall activities.
I have been counting down the days for when I can go to pumpkin patches, maybe even hit up an apple orchard, and I get to do all of it looking super cute in my Quince boyfriend sweater.
This weather is perfect for my dark academia vibes, and I'm so excited to bust out my washable silk blouse because you know I'm going to be taking pictures.
Quince is known for their Mongolian cashmere sweaters from $50. And that's not all. Quince has so many other amazing things on their website.
All of those items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands.
That includes leather jackets, cotton cardigans, soft denim. Like, my entire fall wardrobe is genuinely turning into Quince wardrobe.
By partnering directly with top factories and cutting out the cost of the middleman, we get savings as the customer.
One of my favorite parts about Quince is the fact that they only work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices. And they still manage to get premium fabrics and finishes for that, luxury feeling for every item that they have.
Get cozy in Quince's high-quality wardrobe essentials. Go to quince.com/booktalk for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's Quince, QUINCE.com/booktalk, BOOKTALK, to get free shipping and 365-day returns. That's quince.com/booktalk.
Before we go into, Regulus and everything, we're just going to go through the whole scenes and the whole chapter chronologically. So, we're going to come in and out of these clues with Aidas, Regulus type of thing. So right now, Bryce doesn't let Hunt stop her. Quote, Bryce, damn her, walked forward. Hunt tried to block her, but she easily sidestepped him, her chin high. Bryce really just won't let Hunt or anyone stop her, and she does just move forward in life without thinking about what other people are trying to do, which I get it, but at this point she thinks it's her old cat friend, right? And Cat Daddy, who is not actually Cat Daddy, says, quote, hello, princess. The demon prince purred the word with such intent, such delight, like he has some form of claim on her. Hunt's lightning flared. And it kind of makes sense because it is Regulus owning, really feeling like he owns Bryce. So I get that that's kind of a clue. However, my Jack mind, when I first read this, was rooting for Cat Daddy. I was hoping Cat Daddy would be an option here. I wanted that love triangle. So I was like, yeah, you do. So I was in fact disappointed about that.
I don't know whether SJM was counting on the fact that when we read this scene, we haven't read Earth and Blood in a while. Or if she hopes we've read Earth and Blood to catch the clues.
Okay, let's hear it.
So after greeting Bryce, Aidas calls Hunt Orion straight off the bat.
Is this book or chapter 51 book?
No, this is in Sky and Breath.
Okay.
Aidas says, hello, princess. And then Hunt says something and basically back off or whatever.
Yeah.
And Aidas calls Hunt Orion straight off the bat and says, I thought we were friends. Now, this is fishy if you've recently reread chapter 51 in Earth and Blood, because Aidas didn't give Hunt the time of day.
In 51 or
in
this
51?
One? Oh, okay.
Until he finally looks at Hunt and is like, who are you? And then he only figures out who Hunt is after smelling his lightning, essentially. And he's and then he asks, why is that black crown on your head? You know what's not on Hunt's head anymore?
The black crown.
Why doesn't Aidas ask him about that?
Yeah.
Because it's not like he has a peephole where he can see.
It would make sense that he would at least comment on it.
Right. Congratulations on getting rid of the black crown or whatever.
Something. Yeah.
Right?
It would be a reference to their last conversation.
Exactly. But there is no comment. And the only time Aidas ever uses Hunt's name is to call him Athalar when he talks to Jessica at the epilogue. He never calls Hunt by name in person. So just a little tidbit. Also, there's a moment during all this conversation, Hunt looks into Aidas's eye, into Aidas's eyes, and the eyes glow like blue stars. What are stars in this world? Asteri.
Oh, yeah.
The Asteria
The
are
Asteria.
stars. Sorry,
Yeah.
I should have said who are stars. My bad.
Yeah. I mean, I was getting towards it. The
You
Asteria.
were.
Yeah. I love that. Good catch. I'm happy you went to go reread that section.
I thank you, because when I was originally doing my notes, I was like, I don't know how we're supposed to tell that this is Rigulus. And I had to go back and read.
And I feel like even that is so subtle.
It's very subtle.
Because I'm still trying to determine the moments that it's actually Rigulus and versus when he's pretending to be Aidas. And like, here's a moment, right? Quote, "You knew the last Starborn?" Ruhn asked. Aidas's eyes now flared with a strange sort of rage as he looked upon the Fey Prince. "I did. I knew the sniveling prince whose light you bear." I feel like that could be either one,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Yeah.
because like we know that Thea was with Prince Pelion, whatever his name is. We
Mhm.
know, but then he ended up assaulting her daughter
Mm-hmm.
and having kids with her.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, Aidas would hate her.
Yeah.
However, so would Regulus.
Yeah.
Okay, he's giving a good Aidas performance.
Yeah.
Do you want them to know that history?
I don't know that there's a reason to not, because are you talking specifically about the history of Peleus assaulting Helena?
Well, Aidas being in love with Thea.
That's fair. I don't know that we pick it up here. I think we actually pick it up more in the epilogue of
Yeah,
Earth and Blood.
But what I mean is, though, this I can see as like, well, why would Aidas hate Peleus so much, right? Like,
Mhm.
it to me, that's like a clue to it. And it is a clue
Yeah.
as to like why Aidas would do that. But how this isn't Aidas, this is Regulus.
Yeah. Well, maybe Regulus got sick of Peleus. Like maybe
Or
they're...
he knows that Aidas was in love,
Yeah.
so therefore he would. Sometimes I think he's doing too good of an acting job.
Yeah, sometimes I think...
SJM went too heavy on the
Yeah.
Aidas acting.
Yep, I agree. When Aidas acknowledges his knowledge of Thea, this is the quote where the eyes glow. Quote, "Aidas's eyes glowed like blue stars. I remember the last Starborn Queen and her powers. He seemed to shudder." Now, we kind of pick up, we don't know for a fact at this point, Aidas was in love with Thea.
Yeah.
At the end of Earth and Blood, he says, "Her starlight was a song in my blood." It seems kind of romantic.
Yeah.
So we assume. So if that's the case, why is he shuddering right now? And I think that is a clue towards, not that we understand it at this moment, but I do think that's a clue for Aidas actually being Rigulus, because
Okay.
the Starborn power is intimidating potentially to the Asteri, because it might be the only thing that can kill them.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's my interpretation.
I'm literally looking for anything.
Yeah, that's
Literally
fair.
looking for any interpretation. This might be a breadcrumb, but I think it deserves a little bit of discussion. One of the most iconic lines ends up meaning so much. Now, this is a line that like we as a community analyze so much pre-Flame and Shadow. Quote, "Thea's other daughter got away, vanished into the night." I remember Lily, Happy Hermit, like mentioning that line to us at one point, and I was like, I cannot remember this to save my life. And reading it, I was like, there you are. There's that quote. And that little tiny quote did so much to rock our community.
Yep. Yeah. Well, because it's also shortly followed by something that Ruhn says, which I think I did put in the breadcrumbs.
No, it's okay. I just wanted a little bit. We power through breadcrumbs normally, and I just wanted to say, like, damn it, that line did wonder. That's like a great line for us all to freak out over.
Yeah.
There's a lot that Regulus does that confuses me as we continue to be confused. Quote, "I tell you this now, Bryce, so the past does not repeat itself. Are you going to do anything to help in this endless war?" Ithan said slowly. "Hell is our enemy, is it?" Aidas laughed. "Who wrote that history?" And then here's another one. "You knew that, Bryce Quinlan, and protected the books for years, yet you have done nothing with that knowledge." And then another moment. "Don't play the reluctant hero. That is cliche."
My note, it's kind of meta.
It is. So it's like, I get that Regulus is trying to get Bryce to be a part of this. Like right now, Bryce is following his instructions too well.
Yeah.
You know, like she is not getting involved. She doesn't want it. She's laying low. She's doing exactly what he asked her to do.
Right.
So now he's trying to like stir some shit up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Again, is this too good of a trick? Did SJM make us believe it's Aidas too much? Should there have been a little bit more of clues that it's Regulus, especially the quote that I got really stuck on was he was telling Bryce that Hell's armies are waiting for her. That is a huge clue that you probably don't want your potential enemy to know. Now, granted, he probably doesn't look at Bryce as an enemy and stuff, but he's still offering her an army that is actually within her reach.
Right. I'm so conflicted by this.
Yeah.
I don't know how to interpret this scene because either Aidas is gloating right now and is so confident that he's fooled everyone, which he has.
Aidas or Regulus?
Sorry, Regulus. Regulus is so confident that he's fooled everyone into thinking he's Aidas that I'm calling him Aidas.
Yeah.
And I think he's gloating on that fact.
Yes.
So he can say whatever he wants and it can be true, but that's okay because he wants Bryce to go down the path of rebellion.
I mean, and that could just show like how confident he is in winning, right? That he could like give her every little ounce of truth and he's still so sure that he's going to win.
On the flip side, there is part of me that is convinced SJM wrote this with the intent for this to truly be Aidas to start off with.
Yeah, kind of.
And then repurposed it.
Yeah.
I could be wrong. It is an assumption. The one thing I will say, if you go back and read Earth and Blood, chapter 51, Aidas doesn't reveal all that much. They actually don't talk a lot. So this Aidas is way chatty.
Truly.
He is
truly
so chatty, where the true Aidas is very cryptic. He even tells Bryce in Earth and Blood, quote, information is not free.
Yeah.
And I think we were supposed to spot the inconsistency in that messaging. But honestly, I didn't remember that messaging.
I also think that like it ends up being too close to Aidas's actual personality.
I think there's so much truth that at least for me, it's like, okay, this is Aidas. Yeah. It's just all true.
Yeah. It is frustrating. And especially like it's either frustrating. You can either look at it this way, like either way, it's either frustrating for how much it's like, you're not giving me enough clues that this is actually Regulus. You're not making me at the end when it's the reveal, I don't believe it. Or you can be like, this is so terrifying because when Cormac comes in, he goes, oh, there's Agent Silverbow.
Right.
Like, I get that the horror that SJM has us believe at the end is like that not a single thing was a surprise to them.
Yeah.
To the Asteri.
Right.
They are so all-knowing that they set this up from the get-go.
Right.
Which is terrifying.
Yeah, it is terrifying.
And I get that that's like what SJM is trying to do.
Yeah. And even that bomb of Regulus as Aidas saying, hello, Agent Silverbow, and then leaving is supposed to be a clue because Aidas isn't that all-knowing. He didn't know Hunt was enslaved and and he just knew who he was because he helped in the creation of Hunt.
Yeah, that's his nephew.
But he doesn't know 200 and something years later that Hunt's been enslaved the entire time.
Yes.
How is he supposed to know who Ophian rebels are? He's only ever come into this world to check on Bryce.
Yep.
To the best of our knowledge.
Yeah.
So it seems odd to me. And I think it's supposed to. He doesn't know who Agent Silverbow is.
Yeah.
This is supposed to be a clue because the Asteri, as you said, are all-knowing.
Yeah.
And Regulus can't tone down his all-knowingness.
Yeah, he has to.
He does like to talk. I mean, and we see this at the end of the book. He likes to talk about how much he knows everything.
Yeah.
And he does love to show that off. And I think we're seeing his personality here without realizing we're seeing his personality.
True. All very true. We're in chapter 16. Everyone's freaking out that Cormac is there. And they're like, oh my God, he's a rebel agent. Quote, Bryce had a strong feeling that the Prince of the Chasm had also let Cormac through the wards using his unholy power. Fucking demon. That's supposed to be a clue. Like, I get that that's supposed to be a clue. But I also could believe it that the Prince of the Chasm could do it.
Yeah. I mean, there's a reason why we didn't suspect it the first time we read it.
Yeah, well, he does go and see Hunt in the Crystal Palace when he's being tortured.
Right. He's able to pass between the worlds, but I don't remember the real Aidas ever doing magic in this world.
Yeah, you're right. Like, because he's only ever been like...
He's been
cat.
summoned.
Yeah.
Or he's been a cat.
Yeah. Okay.
So I do think it's supposed to be a clue because how does a cat suddenly
have power?
to do this. Whereas in the epilogue, he was licking his butt. Like,
Was he?
He was licking himself. I assume it was his butt.
Hilarious. I mean, if you're a cat,
It's what my cat does.
You gotta try, I guess. So now Cormac's here, and once again, we are seeing Bryce and Hunt enter their special dance. Quote, Hunt casually stepped into Cormac's path. Lightning danced over his wings. Alpha hold to his core, yet it warmed something in her. And then Bryce steps around him, and then he steps around her. Like, everyone's like stepping in each other's path. And it's really a dance between them, still trying to figure out like what's acceptable and what's not acceptable for Bryce. You know, like, 'cause she's somewhere between like, yay, like, you know, he's there to defend me, but she's also saying like, screw you, I want to go see what's going on. It's only allowed when she allows it. Like, Hunt's alpha wholeness. There's no, at this point, there might be consistency later, but it's not like, hey, when I'm trying to defend myself, I don't appreciate it when you do this, because he consistently does that or something.
Right.
There's no consistency of when she deems his alpha wholeness okay or not. So that's...
Yeah, I've thought about this. And so one of the questions I wrote in response to your note was, if we can't figure out the pattern ourselves, does that mean Bryce doesn't know how she feels? Or does that mean SJM doesn't have a clear vision on how Bryce really feels?
Yeah.
And I don't know where I'm at with that.
Yeah.
However, another thought that occurred to me is the quote, warming something in her, actually talking about the powers being absorbed into her, and Bryce is misinterpreting how her body is reacting.
That's a good point. I hope it's that.
Because she's capable of thinking about him as an alpha core. Alpha core. Alpha hole.
I'm really into cottage core and alpha core.
I am into alpha. No, I'm just teasing. She's capable of thinking he's being an alpha hole right now.
Yeah.
But she's misinterpreting potentially how her body is reacting.
But sometimes he's being an alpha hole.
And she's like, damn, it did things to her.
Yeah. Or like, and doesn't like it or does.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot about Bryce that's wavering right now. Like, you know, going from like, I want to be there for him, I don't want to be there for him. Like, there's no real consistency to Bryce right now. And at this point, I'm willing to forgive it and say like, okay, yes, she's gone through a really traumatic experience. She's grappling with her new identity. Nothing about the Bryce of this moment should be like steadfast. And I can be okay with that. I'm going to need it to be tightened up by the end.
Yeah.
To believe it.
Yeah.
More. When everyone here, and remember Tharion and Ithan are also still here, are waiting to see what Cormac has to say, Bryce is the one to set the tone. Quote, she shut the apartment door and claimed a seat at one of the stools in the kitchen counter, kicking off her heels beneath it. Ruhn slid onto the one on her left. Hunt perched on the one to her right, leaving Cormac standing in the middle of the great room, eyeing all of them. Bryce is kind of creating a casual moment by taking off her heels. Like, again, like she's using fashion and the disarmament of it into consideration. Also, don't forget, Hunt probably has a feet fetish. It's adding that false sense of comfort. And then the fact that she's also flanked by the two main men in her life.
Yeah.
You know, like that's like, she's got power covered, right?
Yeah.
And it also makes Cormac obviously alone, because now he's like in the center of the room, and it's such a power play.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely power positioning.
I really love it. Bryce is confusing, but I want to unpack all that, because like we're going to keep talking about her confusing. Quote, lightning snaked along Hunt's wings. His face was a deathly calm, the embodiment of the Umbra Mortis. A thrill shot through Bryce's veins as he spoke. And then Hunt threatens Cormac. Gods damn him. He meant it. Bryce's heart thundered. So again, like, I think there's something about when Hunt is the Umbra Mortis, when he's deadly, when he's not Hunt, that's when she likes him. Because what we do know is that like Hunt hates being the Umbra Mortis. Hunt does not like doing the whole death thing. And she struggles, I think, a little bit with that, because she needs him to be on her page. Yeah. And the Umbra Mortis is who would be on her page and would be willing to do what it takes to accomplish everything. And I think that Bryce is attracted, not more, but like the attraction that she has to that Umbra Mortis ruthless side, it's more than I realized. And it also makes sense when you think about the fact that, like, she fell in love with him as he was the Umbra Mortis.
That's exactly a thought I had, too. Bryce fell in love with Hunt when he epitomized the Umbra Mortis.
Yeah.
Like, she saw past that persona.
Yeah.
And was capable of loving all sides of him.
Yes.
But Hunt is now lacking that side.
Yeah.
Because he's free. He doesn't have to be the Umbra Mortis. And so Bryce is missing a part of the Hunt she fell in love with.
Yep.
And I think that does contribute to part of the disconnect. Because she knows what he's capable of and she loves him for what he's capable of. But Hunt doesn't want to be that person.
Yeah. And she kind of drags him along to, like, be that person.
Right. And I would say he doesn't, he takes on the mantle of Umbra Mortis once in a while, but we see in Flame and Shadow how he spends a lot of time like, I've got to be the Umbra Mortis again.
Yeah, yeah.
Hunt is resisting that identity as much as he can in this book. And so for him to not be on Bryce's same page, in my mind, is not about Bryce. It's about him resisting who he is at his core. Not who he is at his core, but in conflict with who he was and who he wants to be.
Yeah.
And the world not allowing him to be who he wants to be.
I agree. Like, it's his conflict doesn't have to do with Bryce, but Bryce's conflict is, like, not realizing that he's not that person.
Yeah.
So, but which is kind of funny because, like, Bryce is resisting the title of princess and that identity, and Hunt is resisting the title and identity of Umbra Mortis. The difference is one's a killer.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, you can't necessarily compare the two.
Except the Starborn princess is going to have some killer powers. Eventually.
Just going to light up real bright. We get a little bit of backstory with Pippa, and which is such a funny name for such a horrible, murderous person.
Yeah.
You know, we get a little bit info about how she would kill Vanir, even the kids, right? All for the sake of, quote, cleansing the world, which is never a good sign.
Never, ever.
The only words that are good follow, like, after cleansing or before is juice. A juice cleanse.
Even a juice cleanse is questionable.
I'm not saying that I personally support it. I'm just saying that's the only time that, like, if you're like, I want to cleanse, maybe, like, your closet. You can cleanse your closet. You can cleanse your bowels.
Cleanse your spirit.
Yeah. But, like, anything else?
Not
recommended.
No.
I think that, like, this is a good moment because we see that SJM wants the reader to know that, like, Ophion, they are not the good guys. They are not the people to look out for or to root for. And I feel like it's also meant to have Bryce feel like she has less options. Because if she could just go and join a war, then yeah, like, you know, all right, I'll go help the cause. But she doesn't want to help them. Yeah. She certainly doesn't want to help the Asteri. So she's like, all right, I guess I'll take them on my own.
Yeah, let me be the solution to the problem.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to call out what you were alluding to, Jack, and Pippa and the Lightfall Squadron and their treatment of the Jaguar shifters is equivalent to ethnic cleansing in World War II, and that we've seen in other instances in our history and our world in general. It's not great.
No.
It does make me wonder, though, was Earth and Blood supposed to have some sort of World War I ties? Or
Ooh.
And I haven't figured out the answer to that. I will say the bomb raids at the end of Earth and Blood do have echoes of World War II to me. But
it reminds me of the U.S. nuking Japan.
Yeah, Hiroshima.
Yeah. That definitely is reminiscent for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you know what, people? Here's a recommendation. Like, just, like, don't be racist. Or specious in this case. But, it's just, life is so much better when you don't hate people.
And when you don't think you're better than
others
just purely by genetics.
Yeah, you could think you're better from others for other reasons. Like, we went to the gym this morning. Look at us. And guess what? I'm not going tomorrow.
I'm not either.
There's just so many other ways. Like, you know, feel good about yourself for reading a bunch of books.
Yeah.
Ideally non-racist, hateful books. I love our, like, we're speaking to our audience like there's someone out there who listens to us that's like, you're right, I should stop being racist.
No, we assume everyone
is chill.
Is chill.
Yeah, I would really hope. Or, like, I mean, the amount of times that we've talked about, like, you being Chinese and me being Hispanic, like, someone being like, what? I've been lied to this whole time? She looks so white. Talking about me. You look fairly white, but...
I'm white. I can be white passing.
You can be white passing, and you can be
Asian
passing.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things in college, getting ready. Amy turning to me, should I look white or Asian tonight?
Yeah. I don't know how I did that.
Makeup?
I mean, let me rephrase. I understand I used makeup. I don't remember doing my makeup any differently.
Yeah. But somehow you did. I don't know. Sometimes I think back to the time and I'm like, I swear I was good at makeup. Was I?
I don't remember.
I feel like I was. And like in hairstyles, I was really good at the poof.
You really were.
I was a master at the poof. R.I.P. poof. Cormac is the one whose reason for joining is a noble reason.
Joining what?
The rebel cause.
Okay.
Yes. He's joining the rebel cause. He's doing it for, like, actual good reasons.
Yeah.
Quote, I joined because I felt it was right. The details are necessary. I think Bryce starts to see herself in him, or I think she also projects what she wants to see in Hunt in him as well. Because when Hunt talks about the dungeons at the Crystal Palace, quote, Bryce hated the shadows in his eyes. Once she'd do anything to help heal, do anything to avoid renewing. Team survive at all cost. That was her team. She didn't care if it made her a coward, unless it involves Emil. I'm team survive. I want to protect him at all costs. But, like, Cormac was willing to do the right thing. You know what I mean? And I think she keeps waiting for that other shoe to drop with him, because an example of, like, you know, her need to help Emil, quote, I don't care about politics. Emil's a kid and lost. I want to find him. And, like, that's so different to the previous page where she's like, I don't want his sadness in his eyes, but I want him to be the Umber Mortis and kill people so that we can find this child.
Yeah. Bryce's conflict, I think by the end of this episode, I came to a conclusion about why she does what she does despite Hunt's wishes otherwise and despite Bryce wanting to protect Hunt.
Yeah.
And a point that I'm going to make later that I think is relevant here, I think how Bryce defines survive at all costs is different from how Hunt defines survive at all costs.
Interesting.
For Hunt, survive at all costs just mean him and Bryce.
Yeah.
For Bryce,
survival
for Bryce, survival at all costs is her entire family, all of their friends, everyone she can help along the way.
Yeah.
Right? So I think scope is different for them.
I think that's such a good point, because, like, Hunt would be like, it's fine, we can repopulate the earth. Like,
yeah, exactly. We can have as many babies. We can be the next Adam and Eve.
Yeah,
it's
like,
fine.
You know, I mean, it's still based on incest, but, like, it's like, I really feel like Hunt would be, like, okay with it.
Yeah.
To your point, Bryce is like, no, we need other lives.
Yeah, exactly. I like having my brother escort me home from work.
I like having her brother escort him from work too. The conversation moves to Sophie's body, right? And are they able to find Sophie's body because there's some evidence that she was released from her chains or blocks on when she was under the ocean? And, quote, Bryce studied her manicured nails, wondered if she'd ever be able to hold out if it ever came to that. And for the first time, when she's weaponizing the feminine, I think she's looking at it like nothing would get her out of that moment.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that she looks to her nails in a very casual thing, right? Like, that's a very casual thing to do to show that you're just not interested.
Yeah.
But she's looking at her nails thinking, could I survive?
Yeah. Yeah. I think this is a moment where Bryce respects Sophie the same way that we saw Ruhn learning to respect Sophie.
Yes.
And what I think is happening for both of them is that they're learning to empathize with Sophie and Emil. And Bryce has always empathized with Emil the second she heard his name.
Yeah.
But what I'm starting to see is that these two individuals and their acts, especially Sophie's dedication to obtaining information that could bring down the Asteri, whatever that information is.
Yeah.
It's causing, especially in this moment, Bryce to question, am I capable of that too?
Yeah, yeah.
And do I want to see if I'm capable of that? What they're doing, essentially, Sophie and Emil now have become the symbol in my mind of drawing people away from normal.
Yeah.
They're like the light at the end of the tunnel of like on one side and normal's the light on the other side. And they're trying to pick which one to go to.
Yeah.
And Bryce is going to ultimately choose Sophie and Emil. And that's why, you know, we're going to talk about the fact that Bryce keeps trying to figure out Danica's level of involvement in this.
Yeah.
And you're going to talk a little bit about that. But at the end of the day, for me, it's not about Danica.
Yep.
Danica happened to also be trying to pursue something that led to the right choice. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And Bryce can't help her curiosity about Danica and to uncover how much Danica really lied to her.
Yeah.
But I feel like the chapter on Danica was closed in Earth and Blood.
Yes.
And this right now is really about, can I do what Sophie did?
Yes.
Because
I can agree with that.
I feel like that might also be the right way to go.
Yeah. I can be on board with that. I like that outlook.
Thank you for listening to part 1 of this week's episode of Book Talk for Book Talk with Jac and Amy. Stick around for part 2, which airs on Thursday.
We encourage you to rate and subscribe to our show on your preferred podcast listening platform. We would love to hear your thoughts based on today's conversation. You can submit your comments to our form at booktalkforbooktalk.com for a chance to have your feedback discussed during a future mini episode or on a Patreon exclusive episode.
If you are enjoying the podcast, please visit our website, booktalkforbooktalk.com, to view our latest merch and learn about supporting the show through Patreon, Ko-Fi, or Venmo. Bye. Sorry.
Say bye to me.
I'm sorry.
Look me in the eye. Mimo, Mimo, my. How am I clipping? Am I not clipping?
Fall has officially started here in Los Angeles, and that means we finally get to do fall activities.
I have been counting down the days for when I can go to pumpkin patches, maybe even hit up an apple orchard, and I get to do all of it looking super cute in my Quince boyfriend sweater.
This weather is perfect for my dark academia vibes, and I'm so excited to bust out my washable silk blouse because you know I'm going to be taking pictures.
Quince is known for their Mongolian cashmere sweaters from $50. And that's not all. Quince has so many other amazing things on their website.
All of those items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands.
That includes leather jackets, cotton cardigans, soft denim. Like my entire fall wardrobe is genuinely turning into Quince wardrobe.
By partnering directly with top factories and cutting out the cost of the middleman, we get savings as the customer.
One of my favorite parts about Quince is the fact that they only work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices. And they still manage to get premium fabrics and finishes for that, luxury feeling for every item that they have.
Get cozy in Quince's high-quality wardrobe essentials. Go to quince.com/booktalk for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's Quince, QUINCE.com/booktalk, BOOKTALK, to get free shipping and 365-day returns. That's quince.com/booktalk.